So Dawn, how did you first get involved with SCWIST?
I first got involved with SCWIST through Sarah Swenson, who I worked with for 4 years at SFU. And my interest in SCWIST actually derives from when I was a graduate student and a postdoc at the University of Alberta. I'd been involved with WISEST. So she found out, because I came back to Vancouver in the late, I think 97, to do a postdoc. And then I started working with Sarah in 1999, and she was on the SCWIST board and was president at some point. And she said, "Oh, you were, because she saw my CV, you were involved with WISEST, and so you should come and join SCWIST." So I did.
And what's your academic background, and what are you working at now?
I am a zoologist by training. I'm a comparative physiologist. My academic background, so my undergraduate, my bachelor's degree and my master's degree are both from UBC, and my PhD is from the University of Alberta, and my research was about metabolic regulation and control of breathing in hibernation. Very interesting topic. And then I have a postdoc in biochemistry and a postdoc in mathematical modeling. And I was interviewing for academic jobs, and then the opportunity to be a grants facilitator at SFU came up to work with Sarah, and I was hired into that role. And I was there from mid-1999 to mid-2003. And then I was recruited to BC Children's Hospital Research Institute, which had a completely different name at the time, to start up research development there. And so since 2003, I've been the head of research development at BC Children's, which is it's UBC, SFU, UVic, with some PHSA oversight because of the hospitals, and it has provincial mandate. And yeah, it's been a really good job. I really like it a lot. I hope so. I try.
What do you love about your job?
I love two different things about it. I love mentoring young professors, new assistant professors. I like helping them get the foundation for their research programs going. I love that part. One of the things I really like about my job is it brings together research, language, and architecture, and it brings together those three components, all three things that I really like a lot. When I was an undergraduate, I couldn't decide between comparative physiology and comparative literature. And I chose comparative physiology because faculty at the time were very good at forcing us to think. Whereas in literature, they kind of wanted to tell us what to think. And I didn't really like that. I like synthesizing things and integrating things. So that's one thing I really, really like. The second thing I really like is the constant creative problem solving. I really like trying to crack the nut. That's the scientist in me. So it has an experimental component to it, in that you really have to try and work around a problem and figure it out and figure out how to move it forward. Sometimes I talk about it as trying to, unroll that tangled ball of wool. And I like that part a lot. And I like the people. I wanted to also add, on a children's site, that's been life-changing to work on a children's site, because you just can't feel sorry for yourself. It's just not possible.
That's very empowering. You have a PhD, and a lot of women in particular, bench work is very time consuming. It's not 9 to 5, and it's not always compatible with being a tremendously involved parent or having a tremendously rewarding life outside of work. And so women will opt for something outside academia. And I've heard time and again, when they're making that decision, feel like they've somehow failed, that they've wasted their time in getting graduate degrees or a PhD even. And yet when they do get into a work life outside academia, I think a lot of them discover that PhD was an important ticket and an important building block to be able to do what they're doing well.
Yeah, and I've certainly mentored a lot of people through that transition and through that, what do I want to do? And I think a few things. One is that I chose to do a PhD because I wanted to be faculty, because I wanted to do research, and I didn't drift into it. I have an honors degree and I could have gone straight into a PhD, and my supervisor would have really liked me to. But I said, no, I'm not going straight into a PhD because I want to be more strategic about this. I want to think about it. I want to think about what I want to do. And I think that in the last couple of decades, that strategic thinking is not encouraged nearly enough. People drift into PhDs out of undergraduate programs, and they're not really sure why they're there a lot of the time. On the other hand, there's the people who went into PhDs to train for a non-academic job as a zoologist, because a lot of my colleagues weren't training for academia. They were training for government jobs, wildlife conservation, fisheries, all kinds of other things, and policy jobs. And I have always thought that all training is good training, and all experience is good experience. And I also was not really raised with live your life through external expectations. But at the same time, when I chose to stop applying for academic jobs and take the facilitation job, which I'm pretty good at and was very well, I had been training myself for that job anyway, because at SFU, in part because of Sarah and the way that they set it up, it is a quasi-academic job. It requires a PhD. It requires that level of training and that level of cultural knowledge about funders and the research community and things that you have learned. I also did postdocs in labs where people were going to industry because they were protein chemists and biochemists, and they were going to go work in industry, and several of them targeted that. One of them works for the FDA as a patent processing person, like a reviewer. And so I think that when people have come to me, I've been able to say, the world is your oyster here, right? You have knowledge. It's not just the letters behind your name. It's the knowledge you've gained. And I think that it is disappointing to a lot of people when they stop doing one path. I had a really hard time with the transition, I have to say, not because I felt badly, but because I was worried, as many people are, that I wasn't going to get to have the autonomy that I wanted and that pretty much my character needs, but that's not how it's turned out.
Let's go back to SCWIST a bit. What are the barriers, if any, that you discovered being a woman in STEM when you were going through it, and now?
Part of the barrier starts way earlier than university. It starts in kindergarten, it starts in elementary school, it starts in high school, and not people saying, science is hard, don't go into science. I mean, that happened to me when I was 15, that the counselors didn't want me to take science in grade 11 and grade 12, even though I had the highest mark in science 10 of a huge school. And I happily was lucky that my parents said, bugger off, she can take whatever she wants. So I think that there's a lot of things that happen way before university, post-secondary education that really are big barriers. And there's cultural thing. And I have to say that I'm very frustrated, as I'm sure many people of my generation are, that this conversation still keeps happening. It shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't matter whether you're a girl, a boy, non-binary, or whatever you are. If you want to do it, you should be allowed to do it, and people should shut up about it and let you do it. I think we have to keep pushing it because we still have to keep pushing it. And the pioneers and leaders that we have in the generations that come before, that cost them even more than it costs us. And I think that we owe that legacy to keep pushing it.
So what progress do you see has been made?
Well, there's more equity in some of the more senior things. So, although I think that certainly there's collectives of young women who are fighting for themselves more than used to be. I think that some of the language describing who's good at science and who's not good at science, and that STEM is broader than math and engineering, and that there's a lot of diversity in it, and that you might be in experimental psychology and you're still doing STEM. Okay, so I think that the breadth of that conversation, I think that the number of young women doing things like TikTok for science is huge. There's way more young women doing it than there are young men. I think social media has made a big difference to women being able to say, look, I'm doing science and I love it. So science communication and that sort of thing has really leveled some of the playing field. But how much power they have, I don't know. But at least they're visible. And I think that role modeling is really important. And I know, for example, I don't remember having a female professor until I was pretty much third year biochemistry or something like that. But I come from a very female empowered family. My mother has worked every day of her life, well, from age 16 or 17, and she had 4 children before she was 24, and she never stopped working. And she had a lot of leadership roles, and, you know, she did really role model. Both of my grandmothers worked outside of the home because they had to. I mean, this idea that there's a luxury that you're not going to get to have to work is ridiculous. Everybody has to work. So you might as well do something that you love. And I think that professors in post-secondary education are becoming less judgmental than they used to be, I think. So, and there's more accountability for harassment and lack of inclusiveness, I think. So
what role do you see SCWIST playing in these strong changes that have happened and the large changes that still have yet to happen?
Well, I think that, so one of the things that happened when I was on the SCWIST board is we got Promo Science from Ms. Infinity, and that national recognition and the national linkages that have happened with the immigrating women in science and all that sort of like broadening out and having more networking across the country has been really important. I think that all of the events, things like Ms. Infinity and things like the XX evening and things are really, really important, because role modeling is really important. And saying to somebody, you know, even if your teachers and your family and your maybe even your friends say, you know, why are you doing this? This is weird. You're a geek, you're a nerd, whatever. That there's another community for young women and girls who want to do this. I also think that the fact that we're becoming somewhat more technological, you know, the computer age does have a bit of a level playing field for certain types of science and for STEM disciplines, even though I think there's quite a glass ceiling there. I think that just having a voice and having a community is really important. And the different types of activities that SCWIST does are really, really important.
How do you feel when you hang out with people at a SCWIST meeting? Is it just a corporate event, or?
No, it's a party. One of the things I really, really like about SCWIST is how cross-generational it is. Like it runs from, you know, late teens, early 20s up to 70s and 80s. And there's no sort of generational barrier in those conversations. I really like that. I really like that. You can rely on SCWIST members to be community, to help, to provide information, to provide support, to provide role modeling, to provide resources. I really like that part. I think that Christine's done an amazing job in her tenure as president. And I think it provides a home. You know, it's like saying, like, here's all of these people that I don't know the right word for this because I'm not religious at all, but it's a little bit like having a club or a church or some kind of community where you all speak the same language, you all are supporting the same thing in different ways. And there's a lot of diversity, but it is inclusive and it is very welcoming to a lot of different kinds of people. And I really I love the age distribution.
It sounds like you plan to be involved with SCWIST for a long time to come.
I hope so. I mean, I am relatively peripherally involved at the moment, but I've always been a big supporter and been a member for a long time now, 20 years-ish. And I think it's a really, really important organization.